I hate you, Logan. You're dumb. Okay, given that we're approaching the end of DC4, I'm going to assume most of you know the score by now. And if you don't, then I'd suggest checking out all of my previous DC4 videos to catch you up to speed, otherwise you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about. Today, we'll be covering episodes 22, 23, and 24. You know the drill by now, let's get started. Episode 22 is a very bizarre case because I have a lot of mixed feelings about this episode. There are a lot of really fun elements at play here, but also a lot of really stupid writing and character decisions that really push my suspension of disbelief. Watching this episode is kinda like watching your dog getting itself stuck under the house. Cause on one hand, you're thinking to yourself, "Aw, you stupid little idiot, when will you learn?" But on the other hand, you're like, you stupid little idiot, when will you learn? We're gonna start with the positives first, because there are a few worth mentioning. First and foremost, I like the challenge. If Odd Nations is using these crazier challenges just to put the characters in cool outfits, then I'm absolutely on board. Everyone looks incredible here. Especially the monsters. I never expected to see an orc or a cockatrice in the Disventure Camp universe, but they both look great, and I think they might be the best part of the episode. Admittedly, they're not quite as cool as Clownbot 3000, but nothing in this show ever will be, so I won't hold that against them. Out of all the crazy Disventure Camp episodes, I would put this one above the zombie apocalypse, but below the superhero battle royale. While the concept of a D&D themed challenge was handled decently well and had a lot of fun moments, I feel like there was more that could have been done with the premise. But considering what we got, I still think this is one of the best challenges in the season thus far. And I wish I could say the same about the character writing, but no. I cannot. Disventure Camp is trying to convey the narrative that these 5 people are all somewhat intelligent and game savvy, which is really hard for me to believe because this episode paints all of them as some level of stupid. Isabelle is definitely the least egregious, but I'm going to save her for last for reasons you can probably infer if you've watched the episode. So for now, let's start with Dead Mom Girl. Hannah's spiraling mental state and subsequent breakdowns lead to some of the best moments in the entire season. I can tell that the writers were trying to convey a deep emotional story about a young woman coming to terms with the death of her mother and how that loss has affected her ability to form bonds in the present. And they absolutely missed the mark wholesale. Her dialogue is way too melodramatic. I get that losing a parent is difficult, and I think that Hannah's reactions are pretty realistic for someone in that scenario. But with all due respect, I don't think Disventure Camp is the right show to tackle that sort of plotline. Firstly, because as a character, we don't know anything about Hannah's mom aside from the fact that she's dead, and the competition-based format makes it impossible for us to learn about her. Obviously, losing a parent is heartbreaking, traumatic even, and I think most of us can sympathize with Hannah on that level. But I personally find it difficult to get behind her storyline due to another big issue with this plotline. That second issue being the fact that Disventure Camp has historically never been great with subtlety. Much like the last scene between these two, the opening scene with Hannah and Logan is a lot more melodramatic than I'd like. Granted, Logan doesn't bring up his bronze medal, so in that respect, this scene is a little bit better than the one in episode 20, but it still feels very redundant to me. Rather than expanding upon their relationship, this scene comes off to me as Hannah and Logan expositing at each other, and I don't much care for that. All of this combined would normally ruin the scene, but about halfway through, Hannah says this.
You knew what you were signing up for. Me? I didn't. All I knew was that it's a game. And here I thought games were supposed to be fun.
I didn't think we could top the utter hilarity of, Logan, you flipped? But this line comes very, very close. What she says afterwards really helps.
Where are you going?
To have some fucking fun!
I don't know, maybe if this scene wasn't so heavy-handed, I might have given these lines more grace, but as it is, this is so fucking funny. It's incredible. Only a few episodes of this, and Hannah is already funnier than Benji could ever hope to be. Now, it might sound like I'm making fun of Hannah, and I totally am, but I actually like her more now than I did in the pre-merge. It's definitely not in the way Odd Nations intended, but as is, I like where Hannah's at right now. Up next would be Logan, but surprisingly, he's not that bad in this episode. A lot of the issues I have with Logan in this episode aren't about him specifically, but about the things that happen around him. Which is why the actual target of my ire is Anastasia. This woman has shown a lot of questionable behavior these past couple episodes, and though she really wore my patience thin, I was able to begrudgingly accept most of her actions and strategy. Let me explain to you why I cannot do that anymore. So after Jade and Isabelle fucking die halfway through the challenge, Logan, Anastasia, and Hannah are left to battle it out in a free-for-all to decide who will win immunity. Hannah, in an attempt to target Logan, tries to reveal to Anastasia that he leaked their plans and lied about Jade, but Logan interrupts her and comes clean on his own, stating that he did what he did for the game and that he doesn't regret his actions. Now, given what we all know about Anastasia, how do you think she should react in this situation? Well, seeing as she completely blew up on Jade under the assumption that he was the one who snitched, you would think that she'd be more than a little pissed off with Logan for lying about all that. Based on the characterization that Disventure Camp sets up in episode 20, that should be what happens. But get this, right? Not only does Anastasia continue to target Hannah because she's not a tool whose paranoia is meant to be exploited, she lets Logan win the challenge.
Is that all I am to you? A tool whose paranoia is meant to be exploited and manipulated. I'm nobody's tool. Go, before I change my mind.
Let me give you 5 reasons why this should not have happened. Number 1, when she suspected Jade of being the leaker not 2 episodes prior, she immediately turned on him without so much as a conversation. So, given that Logan was not only behind the leaking, but framed one of her closest allies, I feel she should be a lot more angry at him. Number 2, you might argue she's decided to forgive and forget because she realized how paranoid she was being. I do not believe this because, A, if she really is that paranoid, she definitely would have double-checked with Jade, and B, she absolutely would not have let Logan win the challenge for fear that she'd be voted off. Is it starting to become apparent how bad Jade's elimination was? Because if they avoided putting in all that unnecessary drama, we would not be here. Number 3, you might also argue that Anastasia and Logan have a very close bond, closer than she had with Jade, and really anyone aside from Marissa for that matter, so maybe she's more inclined to forgive him on that basis. If we're going off of that logic, I think that should make her even more angry with Logan, if not make her paranoia worse. Because if her closest friend left in the game betrayed her, then she should be extra wary of the other 3. Number 4, the episode goes out of its way to state that she's keeping Logan around for, quote-unquote, jury purposes, and while she doesn't delve into the specifics of that, every interpretation that I can think of makes her look stupid. Either she plans to take him to the final 3 as someone who she could potentially beat out in a jury vote, which is risky at best considering Logan is the biggest challenge threat of the final 4 and could very easily just win that challenge and be safe, or she plans to butter him up and use him as a potential jury vote in her favor come the final 3, which is even worse. A, because he's absolutely voting in her favor regardless, and B, because she outright told him that they shouldn't work together and that they would be competitors from here on out, which at this point in the final 5 with Logan being immune is basically an invitation for him to vote her out. And number 5, even if all of that didn't matter, she still should have gone for the immunity win. Given the previous 2 votes, Anastasia should have had it in her mind that she was a target and acted accordingly. Keep in mind, she had no idea that Jade had a vote steal advantage, so if she decided not to flip on Isabelle, then Anastasia's decision to let Logan win the challenge would have gotten her eliminated. And I can't imagine that was her goal when she decided to let that happen. The way they're trying to characterize Anastasia is not the way the character comes off to me, and that leads to a bevy of problems, including, but not limited to, everything I just said. They tried to give her a scene where she realizes her flaws and becomes a better player in the process, only to make her blunder in the most embarrassing way possible. It's very clear to me that they just wanted an excuse to keep Logan around a little bit longer, and if they needed a reason to do that, here's one I came up with just now. Hypothetical situation here. After Logan reveals the truth, Anastasia goes on a rampage, cleaving both him and Hannah to pieces as she takes the win. Soon after, she has a confessional where she goes off on how angry she is with Logan. Ultimately though, despite him betraying and lying to her, she knows that Isabelle is her biggest threat in the game and opts to target her first. Meanwhile, everything with Jade and Isabelle stays the same, and Jade still decides that she's going to flip on her. From there, Anastasia and Jade meet up, and after a few minutes of strategizing, they come up with a plan to take Isabelle out. Everything after that point stays the same. Jade still plays the advantage, and most of the elimination focuses on her and Isabelle, only this time Anastasia was actively involved with the plan. This outcome to me feels a lot more in line with the vision they have for Anastasia. It makes her seem a lot less stupid and a lot more proactive with her game decisions. But, as much as I hate to say it, this whole thing is why I've run out of patience with her. And I hate that I have to say that, because she was easily my favorite character near the start of the season, but she just kept getting worse and worse, and now she feels like a two-dimensional version of herself. Some people claim that she has plot armor, which I personally don't believe, but for me, there's a lot of dissonance between how the plot portrays her and how I actually view her. Jesus Christ, compared to these three, Jade is looking really good in comparison. A few people asked me who of the final four I wanted to win the season, and when asked, I answered that I wanted Jade to win due to a lack of any decent strategy from the other three. Jade might not be the most explosive character, but for the most part, everything she did made logical sense. She was the most consistent character of the bunch, and she never did anything mind-bogglingly stupid. What the fuck are you doing? Hi there. My name is Lexi Waybright, and I'm here to give you some advice regarding baby turtles. If you see a group of baby turtles traveling towards a nearby body of water, do not touch them. This is a bad idea because you risk bringing bodily harm onto yourself or the turtle, and in many places, it is also illegal. Now, with all that being said, it's time for a biology lesson. Now, I'm fairly certain that the big body of water surrounding Stowaki Carnival is in fact a freshwater lake. But the baby turtles in this scene have flippers rather than legs, so they're more than likely saltwater sea turtles. So as far as turtle accuracy goes, this episode is not doing a good job. But since I doubt that was ever a priority, I will not judge the episode by that metric. Either way, this scene is bad. If these are meant to be sea turtles, then you absolutely should not touch them. Sea turtles are a protected species, and it's very important to leave the babies alone as they try to make it out to sea. You could seriously hurt them if you intervene. And if they're meant to be freshwater turtles, then you also shouldn't touch them, because they carry fun infectious diseases like salmonella and botulism. Now, if you weren't aware of any of that, then do not worry. It's not that big a deal. After all, it's not like you're a marine biologist or anything. Jade's two personality traits are being smart and liking aquatic life, and this scene puts both of those into question. For me, it's something of a revelation to learn that all of my animal knowledge is not commonly known information, but I really thought the turtle stuff was more widely known. I'm not trying to shade the show for this. This scene might be inaccurate, but it's not awful. I mean, compared to the elephant fiasco, this is basically nothing. I also understand that this scene was meant to be wholesome, and I probably shouldn't care about this inaccuracy as much as I do. And maybe I would not if Jade had any other interesting personality traits, but alas, she doesn't. Last up is Isabelle, who I genuinely enjoyed this episode. I could complain about how early she died during the challenge, but I'm not going to because I feel there was a lot of setup for her elimination despite that. Also, it was really funny seeing her getting eaten by a mimic. I love it when Disventure Camp characters just die during a challenge for whatever reason. It's always funny when they do. I think this is a good episode for Isabelle to go. In light of the fact that she picked up a baby turtle off the beach, I would have preferred this be Jade. But ultimately, I'm just glad that they decided to split up this duo because they were not interesting. I do question how Jade thought Isabelle was a threat. Like, was she worried that Isabelle would betray her in the final four? Was she worried about Isabelle as a jury threat? That part is a little bit unclear to me. I'm going to assume that Jade thinks of her as a jury threat, which I do understand to a degree. I think Hannah was probably more threatening in that regard, but I think this plan makes enough sense. It also gives Jade a lot more agency and control than she would have had Isabelle stayed. So despite what I said earlier, I think Jade's writing is pretty solid for the most part. In terms of gameplay, she's leaps and bounds better than the other three, which is admittedly not saying much, but I digress. Admittedly though, the strategy is not what I like about these most recent episodes. I am much more partial to the out-of-pocket comedy courtesy of Shadow the Hannah Hog. So yeah, overall episode 22 is very fun, but it is also very stupid. Despite everything wrong with it, I still like the episode. Mostly, Hannah had to do a lot of heavy lifting, but a win is still a win. Now, as of me writing this script, I have yet to watch episode 23, so let me do that real quick. Oh my god, it was so good. Episode 23 is one of the best episodes in the season, and by that metric, one of the best in the entire show. But more than that, it shines a light on DC4 as a whole, highlighting all of its best and worst qualities. I could beat around the bush and talk about a bunch of miscellaneous aspects of the episode beforehand, but I'm just gonna cut to the chase. All of the characters in this episode, and there are a lot of characters in this episode, are spot on. Everyone is either funny or endearing or both, which was very pleasantly surprising. It really felt like one of the pre-merge episodes, and I mean that as a compliment. And to show that to you, I'm going to quickly go over all of the characters in this episode and how they shine. Richard and Spencer admittedly don't do too much, but they're still enjoyable. Richard hosts the birdwatching competition, which isn't too big a role, but it's something I totally see him doing, and honestly, just having Richard around makes me smile, so I'm glad he's here. And Spencer thankfully takes a back seat on this one. He has some fun commentary on the final four near the end of the episode, but his real purpose is to push Benji's plot forward, and I think he does a good job of that. Amelie and Marissa aren't too involved either. Amelie is just Amelie, but Marissa serves as a confidant for Diego in this episode, and I honestly like this pairing. Linda and Ted do barely anything in this episode, but they're so funny I don't even care. I like Linda taking on the role of activity leader, not only because she forces everyone to play bingo, but because she makes Ted want to die. Ted gets so few scenes in this episode, but literally every frame of the bingo scene is gold because he's so upset and it is hysterical. Odd Nations, wasted, Ted Gordon, so badly, he is phenomenal, and I love him. Isabelle is probably at her best in this episode because they actually let her be funny. I know that Isabelle is meant to be one of the bigger strategic characters in the cast, but I personally like her a lot better when she's put outside her comfort zone, because when that happens, she's really entertaining. I love how she spends the entire episode campaigning for Jade to win, only for it to blow up in her face when she asks Marissa of all people. This might be a hot take, but I personally don't think that girl boss Isabelle is all that interesting. Girl fail Isabelle, on the other hand, now that's another story. Diego is another one who consistently surprises me because it somehow always catches me off guard how much I enjoy him in these episodes. Post-elimination, Diego is written as a soft-hearted guy with an affinity for nature and a lot of hang-ups about his relationship with Spencer. And I really like this version of Diego. I think I really started connecting with him in episode 13, then during the return challenge, I really appreciated how he was used in a dramatic plotline. And now I'm starting to think that maybe if he was always written this way, he might have been one of my favorites. Natalia and Alessio don't do too much, but they honestly don't need to, their vibes are enough. I really love the scene between Ivy and Alessio where she's just projecting at him and he just keeps looking at her with this stone cold face. I love Alessio so much, you guys, you have no idea. But the real stars of this episode are the Vibe Tribe, and Benji, I guess. I love Ivy Berkey with my heart and soul. She is so needlessly dramatic in every scene she's in, but also very kind and genuine, and this episode highlights both of these qualities exceptionally well. It really does pain me to know that she won't be in another season, but hey, her voice actress is incredible and she landed a role as Magnet in II4, which is hilariously a higher profile project than Disventure Camp, so that's something. Okay, but here's what I really don't get. Jade is featured very heavily in this episode, and he is incredible. He's easily my favorite character in the episode, and that is really a testament to how much wasted potential he had. Despite being a comedy-focused episode, Jade's storyline is sufficiently engaging, and I think the way they handled his and Benji's reconciliation was very enjoyable. And I said this in the last video, but when they actually give Jade something to do, he's great. Come the jury meeting, he was spitting mad facts about everyone left in the game, and you cannot tell me otherwise. If I did have one complaint about him and the episode at large, is that no one really went off on Logan at the jury ceremony. I was really hoping that Jade would call him out for all the bullshit that he was doing in the game, but he just threw out a passive-aggressive remark and got called salty. Which, like, Natalia, girly, I love you, but please shut up. You have not had to deal with Logan the same way Jade and I have. You do not get it. I guess while we're here, we could talk about the round table in more detail because admittedly, it's not perfect. The jury spends a lot of time hyping up the final four, more than I think any of them really deserve. As I just mentioned, I think Logan in particular got way too much credit. He didn't get nearly enough grief for all of the flip-flopping he did. But I'm pretty sure I know why this is the case. Based on what I know about Jared, I'm fairly confident that the final four of this season are just his 4 favorite characters in the season. I don't know, I might be mistaken, but I think this is a fair guess. I get the strong sense that the jurors are being used as mouthpieces to convey the opinions of the writers, because while some of these comments make sense, something like Amelie praising Logan just shouldn't be there. On a more positive note, last up is Trinji, or Benji and Tristan. Yeah, they still don't officially get together in this episode, which implies to me that it's probably gonna happen off screen, because no way they fit something like that into the finale. I have spoken very positively about this pairing in the past, and that's because they have a little something called genuine chemistry, which is a very useful tool that helps audiences invest themselves in character romances. I'm still not huge on Benji by himself, but in relation to Tristan, I think he hits the right balance of goofy but genuine. I like this episode, and I like how he had to work things out with Jade in order to fully reconnect with Tristan. I think on both sides, that plot was handled well. And Tristan... oh my goodness, my sweet little MB, I feel for you so strongly. It shouldn't come as a surprise that I relate to the trans character and their struggles. I hazard to guess that they probably let Tristan's VA handle the details of Tristan being kicked out of their home and the subsequent heartache that comes with that. Because with all due respect, the primary writers of Disventure Camp are cis men, and I don't really trust them to write this sort of plotline. This whole thing kinda came full circle in a way. Initially, Tristan felt left out when Jade and Ivy got together, and now that Benji is the one feeling isolated, Tristan is the one to try and reach out to him, and I think that's very sweet. As much as I love these two together, I'm kind of glad that this is how their relationship is being handled, because had they stayed in the game any longer, I feel like the writers would have fucked it up somehow. Because out of all the long-term relationships that made it far in the game, not many of them turned out so well from a writing standpoint. I would have preferred it if Trinji got a little more time together, but I'm mostly happy with how they turned out. And I'm mostly happy with this episode. But if you'll recall, I mentioned earlier in this section that this episode highlights Disventure Camp's best and worst qualities. Where does the worst part come in? Well, let me ask you a question. Does it strike any of you as odd that the Motel episodes are notably better than the competition-based episodes? Like, Disventure Camp All-Stars had a string of really bad episodes during the latter half of the season, only broken up by a pretty good Motel episode. Why do you think that is? You could argue that the eliminated characters are just more enjoyable than the ones they chose to make the finals, which I do believe is ostensibly true, but how did that happen twice? I think this is a side effect of Disventure Camp taking itself way too seriously. Both of the Motel episodes don't take themselves that seriously, putting a greater emphasis on comedy and good vibes, and as a result, these episodes are a lot more enjoyable. I actually laughed at episode 23 multiple times, which proves to me that Odd Nations can be funny, they just choose not to be. I think this is why, at least for DCAS and DC4, people tend to prefer the pre-merge episodes a lot more, because they're not afraid to put the melodrama aside and just have fun. Granted, melodrama in itself isn't always a bad thing, it can be used very effectively if written well, but look at like any scene with Logan and Hannah, and it should be clear that Disventure Camp does not write it well. Historically, it's never been one of their strong suits. Putting all of that aside, this episode seriously makes me question why Season 5 is going to be fans versus favorites. I feel like this cast has so many more stories to tell, and so much more potential to be made good on, but most of them just aren't gonna get another chance? Something about that doesn't feel right to me. So, here's my theory. I think Season 5 was originally going to be DC4 Round 2. There is no reason for them to build up characters like Alessio and Diego so much in Episode 13 if they weren't going to make good on that setup. I also vaguely remember Jared saying something about Linda getting another run after her elimination, and somehow I doubt he was referring to Season 6 because it would have been way too early for that. Furthermore, the notion that Ted Gordon was always intended as a third boot and nothing more is just... No, I refuse to believe that any writer would squander that much potential. It makes no sense to me. So yes, I am pretty sure we were supposed to get a second season with this cast, and for some reason, it got scrapped. I won't speculate on why, because that pertains to details of production that I am not privy to and have no business discussing in the first place. But I do think it's a shame that most of these characters won't get to compete again, because despite what some people in the fandom might say, I think this is a really strong cast. I might have hated Spencer and Diego early on, but over time, as they began to develop and interact with more people, I think they both got a lot better, and I can honestly say that as of this episode, I really like both of them. I think Marissa is fairly underwritten when compared to her girlfriend, but from what we know about her family and their relation to the military, there's clearly an interesting story to be told there. And while I don't think Benji is funny, at all. He had a good plot this episode, so clearly he does have potential. And I think everyone else has always been on point. Alessio, Ted, Natalia, Jade, Ivy, Tristan, these are all really fun and enjoyable characters who I'd love to see more of. At the moment, I think the characters that I have the most problems with are the final four, but I think that has less to do with the characters themselves and more just Odd Nation's inability to carry a compelling narrative for this many episodes. As much as I've complained about them, I liked all of the girls during the pre-merge, and even now, they still have good moments from time to time. Logan is really the only outright bad character in the cast, and even then, put him next to Jake, Allie, and Rhea, and suddenly he looks a lot better. So regardless of how these last 3 episodes turn out, I did really enjoy this one. This episode proves to me that the pre-merge wasn't just a fluke. I do genuinely like these characters, and it wasn't just post-All-Stars Dread that made me think that. But because my upload schedule is so bad, episode 24 actually came out while I was recording for this video, so now I need to deal with that. I'm expecting something on par with episode 22. Not perfect by any means, and really not that good if you look at it from a writing standpoint, but still somewhat enjoyable. Let me give it a look.
Oh no, Jared, you fumbled! He fumbled!
Jared fumbled. You can tell I wrote my thoughts between episodes because episode 24 really puts into question a lot of the things I've said in this video. This is a very strange episode, and I know I've been saying that for all of them, but I really mean it this time. Where do I start with this one? Okay, tangent time. Generally speaking, I think the Final Four is a very exciting time for most shows in this format. Usually, the Final Four is a good time to go a little wild, have some fun, and shake up the game a bit. These are meant to be exciting episodes, one last hurrah before the final 3 when things get more serious. Total Drama does this really well, as does BFDI, as does Inanimate Insanity mostly. But Disventure Camp has always fallen a bit short with their Final 4 episodes. 2 of them featured Rhea, which is unacceptable, and the other one had...
Your parents were right about you. You are a mistake.
Yeah, not a great track record, but DC4 is definitely better in this regard. The challenge turning into a 2v2 vying for immunity was fairly interesting, and I think this approach works a lot better than having an all-out battle royale. I don't think the challenge was anything too special. There were a few interactions that I liked, but the bumper cars aren't meant to be the highlight, so I won't give the challenge too much focus. No, the actual focus of this episode would be the relationship between Logan and Hannah. So these two get another scene together, and I'm already anticipating another meltdown from Hannah, but what I get instead leaves me perplexed. These two are actually getting along, speaking to each other like normal people, but then suddenly they start blushing at each other. And then we get to the challenge and they're low-key flirting with each other. And basically, this entire episode is dedicated to the bond that these two share, and how that bond is seemingly taking a turn for the romantic. And I just gotta say, to pull all of that in episode 24 of 26 is certainly a choice. I'll give a more thorough analysis of their content in a moment, particularly the scenes that pertain to the elimination, but for now, let's look at the foundation of Waterlogged as it currently stands. Yes, I'm aware the commonly accepted ship name between the two of them is Pool Party, but I like Waterlogged better, so that's what I'm going with. So, right off the bat, I'm noticing a distinct lack of setup here. Given that Logan was on the Spencer train right up to his elimination, he and Hannah really only had about 5 episodes to bond, and in that time, their most notable interactions involved Hannah trauma dumping and Logan taking the bronze medal in reading social cues. So any notion that these two found each other attractive is based entirely within this episode. And if I had to guess, and again, this is just me speculating here, I think this whole episode is the setup for their relationship, and this was going to be an important plot in round 2. That explanation to me makes sense, but obviously we didn't get that. So a compelling romance this is not. But despite all of that, I kinda like them together. Objectively speaking, this does come out of nowhere, and I can't argue that this is good writing, but at the same time, I think their scenes are really cute. Not all of them hit, some of the stuff post-challenge is very questionable, but we'll get into that in a bit. By default, this is probably Logan's best episode since... God, I don't know, episode 4 maybe. He's genuinely almost tolerable here. And Hannah is absolutely at her best. She's been my favorite character since Jade left, but if you couldn't tell by this point, a lot of that was ironic enjoyment. I am glad to see her actually having fun as opposed to being miserable, so that's definitely a plus. After Isabelle went out, Hannah was the character I enjoyed the most of the final 4, but as of this episode, she officially became the one character who I genuinely wanted to win. So, of course, she gets eliminated here. Am I disappointed? Yes. But is it because the elimination is poorly written? A little bit, but it's not that bad. Here's the breakdown. After the challenge, Logan and Hannah quickly decide to flip, viewing each other as their biggest threats, and they're low-key both right, so I have no issue with this. These two end up in a tied vote, because after Jade and Anastasia made it very clear that splitting the votes is stupid and they shouldn't do it, they proceed to split the vote. This leads to a tiebreaker challenge, which neither Logan or Hannah really take all that seriously. Truthfully, by this point in the episode, I was a little bit tired of their antics, but I do like what this scene represents. I don't like Logan winning though. When I said that Jared fumbled, this is what I was referring to. I think that if Logan got eliminated because Hannah flipped on him, that would have been incredible and easily the most hype elimination of the season. After all, Logan is the villain of the season, and beating him will definitely be the final obstacle that either Jade or Anastasia need to overcome in order to win. From a writing perspective, this whole conflict does feel a bit manufactured to keep Jade in. After what she did last episode and what she said to Logan at the beginning of this one, I feel like she probably should have been the target, but that's a relatively minor nitpick, so I won't count it against the episode. I don't know, I could ramble on about the final 4, but I think I did enough of that in the episode 22 section, so instead, I'm gonna talk about a few minor issues that I couldn't fit anywhere else in the script. At the beginning of the episode, Logan is upset with Jade because she blindsided him. I feel like Logan, legally, should not be allowed to be upset at this. As of this episode, Logan has flipped at least 6 times, although the actual number is probably higher depending on how you want to quantify that. I am putting 100% of the blame for the split vote on Anastasia. I do not know why she and Jade came to an agreement only for her to back out of it. That does her no favors. I don't mind her voting for Logan, but the way she went about it is very strange to me, especially considering her confessional before the elimination, where she strongly implied that she was going to vote for Hannah and just didn't in the end. That to me kinda reads like shock bait, but ultimately it's not that big a deal. And lastly, okay, so I wrote this part of the script really late at night, and for some reason on my checklist, I just wrote Dub Duo is a better ship than Waterlogged. I don't know why I did that. I don't even remember writing it, but I did. So I guess that is what I think. And apparently most of you agree, which is very strange because I don't think most of you know who Dub Duo are. But overall, I think this was a genuinely good episode, and while I'm upset to see Hannah go, I think this was a really nice way to send her off. I do think it's mildly concerning how from the final 7 onwards, characters are only at their best when they're about to be eliminated, but like, we've only got 2 episodes left, how bad could it get from here? If I like 25 and 26 as much as I like this episode, then maybe the season can go out on a high note, because honestly, as long as Logan doesn't win, I think I'll be fine. And he won't, because he's annoying, he's a hypocrite, and he never learns his lesson. Rewarding a character like that with a victory would be ridiculous. But if for some reason he does win, it won't be the end of the world. I'll just leave the fandom, forever, and become a full-time OSC YouTuber, which actually might be a more lucrative decision the more I think about it. But yeah, episode 24, the best Final 4 episode that Disventure Camp has ever done. That might not mean much to you, but the bar was on the floor, so I'm taking this as a good sign. That's it for the review part of this video, but before I go, I have to give a shout out to all of my channel members. Sheepishly, Novaz, Skohei, Factually False, Sour Guts, Nachos, Shoelace, Commander Cone, MI37000, Hadori Unlimited, Ya Boy Sammy 2010, Neo Knight, and Aqua. And while I'm at it, thank you to whoever hyped BFDI Hot Takes Part 1. Apparently I ended up on the hype leaderboard, which I assume must be a good thing. The video was actually underperforming for the first few hours, so that was a major relief for me. Anyway, channel members, you guys are incredible as always, and I am so thankful for your continued support of my channel. channel. YouTube is being weird about how views are calculated now, so those memberships are more helpful now than ever before. I'm not in desperate need of money right now, and I might try to get something started on Ko-Fi if I really need it. Until then, if you like my content and want to see more, consider becoming a channel member. And if you're looking for a less expensive way to support me, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to the channel because that makes the algorithm like me a lot more. We're nearly done with DC4. My next video will cover the final 2 episodes and then we'll be done. Hopefully the season can end off on a high note. Till then, I'm Lexi Waybright and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.